Hello, my name's Gavin, this is Genre Books, it's Tuesday, it's Tag Tuesday, and a bit of a birthday tag. Suey's book banter. She's having one of those birthdays with a 0 in it. This is the big 6-0 tag. And she says, I have decided, instead of dreading this big birthday I have coming up this month, I will celebrate it with a series of bookish videos here on this channel. Here is, if you go down into the description, there. Go have a look at Suey's channel, subscribe, and see what is happening with those videos. There are 6 prompts, some of which reference 6s. Prompt number 1. What is a comfort read you will never outgrow? I don't really do comfort reads, and I've not read this book for years, but it wouldn't take me long if I decided to. Under Milkwood, Dylan Thomas. I do think it is the work that transitioned me from children's books to adult literature. That's the one that I can pinpoint where it's like, I stopped reading stuff that was for kids, mostly. I think it's described as a play for voices, and it is just beautiful. And there is there's a reading from Richard Burton if you really want to sort of get into the music of the poetry. Prompt number 2. What is a book that was published in a decade you were born? This one just scrapes into the decade I was born. It is Angela Carter's The Bloody Chamber. So, this is a collection of short stories retelling classic fairy tales, telling all of these stories from a female perspective, or the perspective of the female characters in those stories. So you have Bluebeard's in there, Red Riding Hood's in there. It's a very slim work. It would just take you a day to get through it, and I'd recommend it to anybody. Prompt number 3. What is a book you would rate 6 stars in a 5-star rating system? All the way through this particular tag, I think I'm picking books that I've not read for a while, so it becomes difficult to try and recall, and I can't recall the details of this book, but the impression it left was a large footprint on my fairly nascent reading journey, as it was at the time. This book had been recommended to me by a teacher, so I probably read this when I was 16, I think. It is definitely one I need to reread now. I was nowhere near worldly wise enough to take all the import from it at the time. I doubt I am now. This Madame Bovary by Gustave Flaubert. I just remember the writing being beautiful. I remember the story, although a lot slower than what I had been used to, was engrossing. And I'm guessing the translation must have been pretty good to hold my attention too. This was a Penguin Classics one from the early 90s, so I can't remember who translated it. I mean, I may have to reread this one to decide whether it deserves 6 stars out of 5, but from what I remember, it absolutely does. Prompt number 4. What is a favourite book from your 6 most read genres? I'm not entirely sure what my 6 most read genres are, so I've just picked 6 genres, and I don't. My favourite book. You can't ask me to name my favourite science fiction book. It's going to change on a weekly basis depending on my mood. But I suppose that's why you can still keep doing these tags. I'm going to go for Western as one of the genres. So this is a genre that's pretty much new to me in the last 2.5, 3 years. And I've really got on board with it. So much so that I've undertaken to doing this 50 Zane Grey books, and it's a Zane Grey book I'm going to choose as my favourite. Western, I'm choosing The Last Trail, which is a very early book from him. It's the last book in I think it's called the Ohio River trilogy, and it just brings out the adventure and the poetry, which I think are absolutely, with Zane Grey, those two pillars of his storytelling. Don't get me wrong, I like his characters, but the landscape, the environment is a character in Zane Grey books. It doesn't really matter what that environment is. And usually the animals can be quite good characters too. I don't recall that so much in this particular book. We're looking at Wetzel, the frontiersman, and he's been in this entire trilogy. He's based on a real person, so we know that we don't really know what happens to him, but that's okay. The book sends us in a particular direction, and I'm quite happy with the direction in which it sends us. The second genre I'm picking is sort of horror, and I think if it was horror by itself, it wouldn't be one of my 6 top genres by number of books. But if you add in Gothic, if you add in ghost stories, then I think we get there. But I'm picking an actual horror book. I'm going to go for Song of Kali by Dan Simmons, which is properly scary. It has some nauseating pieces, it has some frightening passages, it has some horrible things happen, and it's all executed very well. And we are also looking at the additional horror of a proper innocent abroad. Literary fiction, it does occasionally happen on this channel, but again, I'm choosing a book that I read, I don't know how long ago now, probably in my teenage years, if not my very early 20s, and that is Italo Calvino's If on a Winter's Night a Traveller. It has a very odd beginning from what I remember. It basically tells you, says you're reading on If on a Winter's Night a Traveller by Italo Calvino, so sit yourself down, make yourself a cup of tea. You want to really pay attention to this book. It's I'm paraphrasing and probably butchering that, but I do remember being absolutely hooked by that very first paragraph. This was, I think, possibly me not being very used to anything vaguely metafictional, postmodern in literature, and I really liked the playfulness of this book. The fourth category is adventure. I think I probably read more adventure books than I think I do. Or maybe I just have expanded that genre to encompass a few books that people wouldn't necessarily think of as adventure. But this one absolutely is. And again, I'm going quite some way back in my reading. Not quite as far back. So this would have been I think probably read this in my late 20s. So The Three Musketeers by Dumas. It's just as much fun as you would think. Most people have probably seen, a film or a TV series or a animated series with dogs as the lead characters, but there is something absolutely kinetic about the activity in this book by those 4 characters. All of them are very quick to act and just as happy to stop acting and sit down and drink several bottles of wine in a single sitting before going off on another adventure piece. For fantasy, I struggled. So I struggled to pick one particular book of fantasy fiction. I could have chosen quite a few. I really like The Lies of Locke Lamora by Scott Lynch. I quite like the Hannah's Bock fantasy that I read not so long ago. Also The Pastel City by M. John Harrison. But again, stretching the definition, this is absolutely fantasy, but it's not the first thing that occurs when you're talking fantasy. It is not high fantasy or epic fantasy or urban fantasy or any of these other subgenres. It's just fantasy. But I'm not choosing a book that I read years and years ago. I'm choosing a book that I bought years and years ago, but it's a book that I am currently reading along with James at Quaint Curious Volumes. This is Booktube's longest buddy read. We are going through 1001 Nights. So I haven't finished the book yet. I'm already going to put it down as my favourite fantasy. It's just got everything in this book so far. So it could, at this point, end up doing everything twice. And, I would be more than happy. And for science fiction, what's my favourite science fiction book? What's an impossible question? And the answer I choose with a fair amount of regularity. This is a book not nearly as well known as it ought to be, and that is What Mad Universe by Frederick Brown. What Mad Universe would have been the name of my channel had I not found out a week before starting the channel that there was already a podcast with the same name. But what a great book. It does help if you've read a bunch of pulp fiction, science fiction, for some of these things to make sense. But when it all comes together, it's quite glorious. Prompt number 5. What is a book you knew you would love even before you opened it? A book you had a sixth sense about. Was it a sixth sense? Was it the fact that I had read other works by this writer before and really liked them? Was it that this is a character, a writer, a coming together which is praised to the skies everywhere? Possibly a bit of all of these reasons, but let's say I was predisposed to like this book and I ended up liking it even more than I thought I was going to. So, Robert E. Howard, The Coming of Conan the Cimmerian. There's just more to Conan, the character, than I thought there would be, and I absolutely love it. I think we have an idea of what Conan looks like from films and from comics. What this has more of that isn't emphasized in the movies and whatnot is Conan as a pirate or buccaneer, whatever you want to call it. I really enjoyed the naval stories or the nautical stories that are in this volume, and I am looking forward to getting the other volumes in the this is the Del Rey Conan set to carry on that adventure. Prompt number 6. What is a book you would recommend to the next generation of readers? I'd recommend any book you can get your hands on, give it a go. If I had to pick one, and I do because that's what the prompt says, I'm going to go for Chocky by John Wyndham. I think it's a book that would appeal to kids and adults alike. I think it is fairly timeless in its presentation. I think I read it when I was a kid and got something from it. I think I read it I know I read it at the beginning of this year. Obviously as by that point as an adult and parent, and got something quite different from it. This book is the she's leaving home of science fiction literature. So I would absolutely recommend that to anybody. It would get people into reading, it would get young people into reading, and it would get young people reading science fiction, which is even better. Prompt 7 in this 6 prompt tag is tag some other people. So I will do below the line, and just a reminder, I'll link Suey's channel there too. Thanks to Suey for creating the tag and for tagging me, and until next time, bye.